So I want to know. I want to know from you. You were assigned to the Pentagon near the end of the administration to faithfully carry out the president's orders. I want to know what you could tell me what those orders were. I want to know what the plan for withdrawal was, what the key timelines were, what the conditions were. I want to know what the deals were with the Taliban, if you can tell me. And then how did that not play out and why? So
Yeah,
let's go.
let's get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Commander in Chief President Trump says, no surprise, um, get out of the forever wars. Get out. Campaigned on it. He had two secretaries of defense who failed to carry out that mission, and so he made Chris Miller the acting SecDef and sent me over there to be chief of staff for the DoD and carry out that order amongst a few others. So the major theaters of war we're talking about, not just Afghanistan, Syria, Somalia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Okay. Those are live active theaters of war. And he said, I want out of all of them safely. Don't just leave, get a plan, and let's talk about that plan. And we knew that. We weren't just going to come up with a plan and hit go. It's the commander in chief who needs to authorize the plan. So the plan we came up with for Afghanistan was actually, it's pretty simple when you think about it. One, remove all American citizens safely first and foremost. It shouldn't surprise anyone that President Trump's attitude about America first is Americans first. So many people disagree with that, but I don't. I think he's the president of America. So putting Americans first, I agree with. And then he said, okay, it's a theater of war. The Taliban's there, Al Qaeda's there, ISIS is there. How do we safely get out? Well, we have to keep our brain center in Afghanistan. Bagram Airfield for your viewers, right? That was our command and control, our C2 node, our brain for operations in Afghanistan. All operations, logistical operations, medical operations, transport operations, helicopters, airplanes, how we get people in and out of the country. Got to keep Bagram until there's an actual exit plan for Afghanistan. Then you got to and look, here's the thing that probably upsets people the most. They're like, well, if we're leaving, we have to leave Afghanistan with a government that's going to govern the country. And who's in Afghanistan? Afghans and the Taliban. So President Trump said, these guys got to sit down and negotiate, and we're going to help them, but we're going to put conditions on them, hard conditions. And he told the leader of the Taliban, if you attack us, or Al Qaeda does, or anyone, he will unleash the entire authority of the Department of Defense and take you out. And he wasn't kidding, because if you recall, about a year and a half ago, there was an incident while we were in the middle of negotiations where he bombed a terrorist organization and removed them. So they took those conversations on the diplomatic channel, which was being run by Pompeo over at State, seriously. So on a parallel track, you have the military plan and the diplomatic plan, but they have to come together. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So you put those two people, Afghans and Taliban, in a room and say, come to a peaceful interim government agreement, and then we will start removing our troops in a fashion that doesn't hurt American security interest or yours. And so that's the gist of the plan. And the last thing is we would, of course, leave a special forces contingent in country to combat terrorism. I outlined that whole plan in the New York Post op-ed about 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's not military genius. And of course, it was President Trump who came up with the plan, and then we implemented it. Look, two guys went into the Pentagon, me and Chris Miller, and we withdrew out of these theaters of war that people couldn't for years. And now we, the guys who went in, the career national security officials who went in, were the enemy because we actually had a successful withdrawal plan. And here's what I'm most proud of, Jack. Under President Trump's Afghan withdrawal plan, we lost 0 service members. 0. I did not have to attend a dignified transfer because we blundered the exit in Afghanistan. And that's what I'm most proud of. And it was working. And we told the Biden administration, if you remember, they were yelling at us because they were saying, oh, you're not transitioning properly. No, the orders from the White House after the election were clear. Kash, transition the most important national security mission America has, the Department of Defense, to the incoming administration. Roger that. And we established the most extensive transition in presidential history. Now, if they didn't read it or participate in it, you can ask them. That's up to them. I called them. They never called back. But we provided them with all the documentation, all the plans. And what your viewers probably don't know about is, do you know how many troops we have in Somalia now? 0. That theater of war was safely withdrawn out of. And we went to the lowest number of troops in Iraq and in Syria that the U.S. has been since the war on terror started. And again, we did not lose service members during these withdrawal processes because they were implemented strategically with intelligence that was coming in. And we didn't do the one thing they're accusing us of doing. We never politicized the national security apparatus of the United States. They can say it till they're blue in the face, but the facts speak for themselves. We left. They said the Afghan withdrawal plan, not abiding by it. The Taliban said, I'm going to wait you out. And they did. And then we've got American citizens stranded still in country. And we've got 13 service members dead and hundreds of other innocent Afghans dead and women being tortured and killed now. So they could say what they want and they can still blame us like Blinken did when he went to the Hill the other day. The Secretary of State said, oh, they didn't give us a plan. They gave us a deadline. No, we gave you a plan. You chose not to read it or engage with it or change it or adapt it based on intelligence. You chose to politicize it. So I hope someone's going after that guy for misleading the Congress of the United States.
Right. So the first part of the plan is something that I'm most interested in, which is get all of the Americans out of country. First of all, how many Americans were in country? How many of them wanted to leave? What was the plan for getting them out? How did that fail or succeed?
Sure. So there's thousands of Americans in Afghanistan. You can imagine we've been there for 20 years. Lots of folks are affiliated with NGOs or religious projects in country there, and rightfully so, not knocking them. But they're scattered throughout a theater of war. So you have to go find them, use your ground-based intelligence to go get them, and then have actual transport. And in Afghanistan, it's not like you can jump in your Toyota and drive down the street and pick them up. You got to have helicopter lift and fixed wing assets go and get these folks once they've been identified. We were never going to withdraw from Afghanistan until that entire operation was outlined and completed. That was the one thing President Trump cared about the most. And so it's an enormous operation, a huge logistical lift that you need a brain, Bagram, to do out of Afghanistan. And so you get the intelligence community involved, you get the State Department involved. Okay, where is everybody? Have we met with them in person? Did we tell them this is the plan? And if everything's going well, we want you guys out of Afghanistan because we will no longer be there. And President Trump, of course, said the military is not leaving Afghanistan until every American's out. And that was it.
Are there Americans that didn't want to leave? How do you reach out to these people? Did people just say no? Is everyone who wanted to get out? This is what I want to know. Are there people in Afghanistan that wish that they were not there, that cannot get out, that we abandoned?
100%. 100%.
Do you have any idea how many people?
I would say close to 1,000 to 2,000. That's my guess. I don't have access to the intelligence anymore, but what I do have access to is guys that still worked Afghanistan, contractors that were out there. And that's why, we are doing these private organizations, which I'm proud to be a small part of, to remove these guys and gals that are stuck in country safely. We're seeking private funding. We're positioning ourselves not in Afghanistan, but near there. And we're helping folks get out that want to get out. Because to answer your question, are there still Americans in Afghanistan that wanted to get out that did not? Yes. And it's not one, it's a lot. And President Biden said he would never leave Afghanistan if any Americans were still there. And he violated that promise. And they're still there. And there's no plan to get them out except Jen Psaki saying, we called and texted everybody and sent them an email and told them, please come to Kabul and then we'll get you out. What kind of national security plan is that? What kind of leadership is that when you tell someone in an active theater of war who's hundreds of miles away or 2 blocks down the street, don't worry about the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and the suicide bombs, but if you can get through all that and you got my text, we'll get you on a plane and
I mean,
it's outrageously offensive.
The scene from the airport, it just, and you never know what to trust these days. You never know really where these videos are coming from. I'm reminded of that video from China right around the beginning of Corona where a dude's just standing there and he just falls over on his face and everybody uses that as a way to be like, Corona is so deadly that you're going to die just standing up. You just never know where these videos come from. But the video that I saw, all of the videos that I saw on those several days of just crisis and you're just transfixed by what's going on, was that it was chaos. There's people everywhere. There's gunfire going off. There's people hanging off of planes, running down. I mean, the idea that the citizens in the United States, the citizens in Afghanistan, American citizens in Afghanistan, were supposed to just like hop on the bus and go down there and make their way through that crowd and get through some gate and like get their boarding pass checked or whatever, in what was obviously a chaotic, militarized, violent environment, seems to be completely insane. And so I just want to ask you one more time. Originally, the Trump plan was what? Identify, call, reach out, send helicopters and planes to every American citizen in Afghanistan, no matter where they were in the country, up in the hills, in some cave somewhere, whatever. We were going to put out the bat signal and say, you know, come, we'll get you. We'll just come and get you, no matter where you are, take you over all of that stuff by military transport into the appropriate airport, onto the appropriate plane, and then out of there. And then,
yeah, that was the plan and works.
That was the plan. Okay. So then at what point and how does that not happen? Like somebody somewhere is like, you know what? There's American citizens there. You know what? Screw them. We'll just leave them. We sent them a text. They didn't show up. They left us on read. Like what? Like how does that? Who makes that decision?
Commander in chief. And under President Trump, that would never have happened, right? President Biden came in, unfortunately. And look, I keep telling people this, and they don't believe me. I'm cheering for Biden. I want him to succeed in Afghanistan because I don't want people dying. I don't want 20 years of blood and treasure in that country to be wasted. But instead of having a conditions-based withdrawal plan, which is what we had, and that's the key, President Biden had a reactionary evacuation. And removing Americans, removing equipment, we didn't even talk about
We're going to get to that.
National security threat that we left behind. But all those decisions come from a commander, that have to come from the commander in chief, and rightly so. It's his decision. And when you don't have a plan, but what you have is a willing media to politicize the Afghan withdrawal process and just keep blaming us no matter what, even if it was working, it doesn't matter. And when you flip it around, say President Biden was in power when we were doing the conditions-based withdrawal plan, right? And then Trump comes in and just says, forget your plan. Everybody out by this date and forget this talking to the Taliban and the Afghans. We're done. And then 13 service members die. What do you think the media's reaction would have been? Insane. I mean, and then couple that with your question about Americans in country. Can you imagine what they would have done to us if I went to the podium at the White House and said, well, we sent them a text and an email, and if they can get to us in Kabul, we're going to get them out. But they don't, of course, cover these topics the same way. It just depends on who's in charge.
Right.
And I think that is the thing I've been trying to educate people most on, is the national security apparatus of the United States has been politicized, too much so to the detriment of our security. And this is another example of it.
I'm going to come back to this word politicized. You've used it a few times to the point now where I want to make sure I understand exactly what you mean. But before we get to that, I want to clear up a couple more of these technical things or just specific details.
Yeah.
I kept look, I was on vacation. I was literally on vacation while this is happening. So I'm just like getting intel from my guys who are in military and security, intelligence, whatever. They're telling me stuff. I'm on Twitter. I'm basically just observing like most people, although I have a little bit better of a network. And I kept hearing like closing Bagram airport was a bad idea. Closing Bagram was a bad idea. Closing Bagram was a bad idea. Mm-hmm. And the way that I interpreted it and the information that I got was that it was a viable airport that we could have used. Mm-hmm. But what you're telling me is it wasn't just the airport. It was the brain. It was how we were going to do everything. It wasn't just that we closed down an airfield. It was that we closed down the entire operation. Is that what I'm hearing?
You're 100% right. And just let's put it in like military speak, right? Okay. From a geostrategic standpoint, we picked Bagram because of its geography and its location. If you look at Kabul, HKI, Kabul International Airport, right? It's probably the worst from a security posture because it's in a valley and people can just shoot down at you from all sides. Bagram was totally different, right? But think of it this way. If you have a theater of war, you need someplace to run everything out of. Clothing, laundry, food, the service members that are there, their morale, their welfare. Our NATO allies were housed there. And this is the point I forgot to mention. Bagram housed terrorists that we captured on the battlefield with our partners. When we gave up Bagram under this administration, we literally turned the key and let loose thousands of terrorists back into Afghanistan. And the media just washed right over that.
One's
too many.
What would the alternative have been? Gitmo? Like, what would the alternative have been?
Through as we said, keep Bagram. The alternative, what we were doing was to prosecute these guys either in third countries or America or separate military systems, right? Because we can't govern the world like that.
Yeah.
But instead of sending them to Guantanamo, the Afghan government and the Taliban and everybody agreed that and our allies agreed we can detain them here and figure out what to do with them. And we were on a case-by-case basis. We worked those cases. They take time.
Yeah.
But if you just let them all out, then I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah, and here we are going through, due process for terrorists while we've got them captured in Afghanistan, working cases on them. And I see these videos of the Taliban just lining up their enemies with their hands behind their backs on their knees, a row of 10 of them, and just wasting them all one at a time with shots to the head. Like, it just is frustrating.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, we didn't even talk about the tens of thousands of people that have come to U.S. soil who weren't vetted. That's a whole nother part of the plan that we actually did up front. The Secretary of State, if you can believe this, literally said last week, we did not front load the vetting process. We are going to do it from the back when they've come to America. And I'm not talking American citizens. And I'm not saying a lot of these people should not be here. The plan under Trump was you vet them. You charge your intelligence community and your Department of Defense to fully vet these people in Afghanistan before they get on a transport to American soil. That was another component of our plan that I forgot to mention. And and the media, of course, just ignored it and said he's doing the right thing by letting anyone and everyone on these planes. And I'll give you a hardcore example of where it failed. Under the Obama-Biden administration in Iraq after the surge, we airlifted hundreds, if not thousands, of Iraqis over to America. They did not vet them properly. I spent, and my colleagues spent, a year tracking down ISIS from those airlifts in America. We found them. They existed. We prosecuted them. And I'm afraid that that's going to happen again because the number is 10x and there was no vetting done.
So whenever people are saying it's bull crap that the assertion that folks make, which is we can't let these people in unvetted, we can't let people in over the border without a wall, without checking them because terrorists are actually coming in through these processes. You can say from a position of experience that yes, indeed, when refugees and others come in without any vetting, whether it's illegally over the border or through these airlifts or through the Afghanistan, I don't know, whatever the hell we're calling that, that actual real life terrorists have come through, that you have identified, that you have tracked down and picked up, hopefully, or they're still at large, or what's the case there?
It's operational tradecraft for the Al-Qaeda and ISIS and all the other terrorist groups. They use the southern border to get into the country illegally. We've caught them down there. There's cases about that. We've let people in and not been able to do anything about that under this weaker administration southern border policy. These guys get on flights. We know it happened during the Iraq resurge. And of course, I don't have a hard case proof for it happening now because these tens of thousands of people just got here. But I'm telling you, if I'm Al-Qaeda and ISIS, they're putting their guys on those transports all day long. It's a free ride to America. And they won't act right away. They'll come in here, assimilate to society, lay in wait months, if not years. And we're going to find these guys came in on these flights. And it's not good for American security.
Yeah, years. If we've learned anything from our engagement in Afghanistan, folks there got some patience. And they can see the long game in a way that our 24 hour news cycle and political cycle certainly cannot.